Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. They know it, man. You cannot convince me that they don't know it, because trust me, they know it. There's a reason that leftoids have been trying to stir the conversation away from policy over the last, let's call it 7-8 years. They don't want a conversation about policy. They want a conversation focused on everything superficial. They'd rather talk about Donald Trump's orange skin than his foreign policy. They'd rather stick on his tweets and on his character, on his personal life and his family life, or on the myriad of bogus investigations, because they know when it comes to policy they lose. And clearly this whole Bidenomics thing that they've been on lately has been their pathetic attempt to try to combat this fact, but obviously that isn't going to work. Obviously that's never going to happen, because the people know, and especially independents know, that Trump policies worked. Who do I always use as the voice of independence? Joe Rogan. Joe was trending on Twitter the other day for what I describe as stating the obvious. Let's take a look at what he had to say, then let's take a look at what this creep Joe Biden had to say. Let's compare, let's contrast, let's get into the facts. We've got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, let's first start off with what Joe Rogan had to say.
No one is going to run against Trump in the Republican side and win, because you're not going to get the Trump supporters. They are all in on Trump. Unless he has a stroke, unless something happens that's horrible, they're all in on Trump. If you run against Trump, you're now the enemy of Trump. If I was friends with DeSantis, I'd be like, don't do it. You can't beat that guy. You just can't. When that guy gets out there and he's waving to people and they're going crazy, you're not beating that. And the fact that he was the president for 4 years and the country was in a great economic situation, and it looked like his policies were actually effective, and that it looked like the unemployment was down, all business was building, regulations were being relaxed, more things were getting done. You know, when you look at it from a policy perspective, if you just look at it on paper, what he did was effective. A lot of people think it was effective. You don't like him as a personality, so you ignore that. Don't do that. Look at it in terms of a policy perspective. People liked the ideas that he was putting forward. And now you're saying like, oh, the wall is raised. Now, everybody thinks there needs to be a wall. Even the mayor of New York City is now calling to stop immigration into his city. And this was the guy that called it for it to be a sanctuary state. When the reality of what your policies, what kind of actions you put forth, what the results of that are, and those results are highly negative, you're forced to sort of recollect your thoughts and come up with a new perspective. And that's what the mayor of New York City is doing right now. When you look at the Russia collusion, when you look at the Steele dossier, when you look at all the bullshit tried to throw at him that we now know is bullshit, just bullshit, but coordinated bullshit. When you look at the fact that they suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story and that 51 intelligence agency representatives signed off on that to say that this was Russian disinformation, which they know is not true. That's scary, because now you have the intelligence agencies colluding to keep a guy from being president that was president during a time where the country was thriving economically. You're not going to beat that guy.
Would he get your vote?
He'd get my vote before, he'd get my vote before Biden. I said that before.
He's 100% correct. And if it was just policies on paper, Trump would win 10 out of 10 times. Frankly, any conservative would win. You know, as they say, the proof is in the pudding. Ask the simple question, were you better off then than you are now? And pretty much everyone's going to answer that question in essentially the exact same manner. When it comes to policy, Joe Biden is in the gutter. And of course, instead of approaching policy from a common sense perspective, Democrats keep digging their hole deeper and deeper, hoping that their slick marketing campaign is going to turn it around for them. But it's not. It's simply not. Especially not with Creepy Joe as the messenger. While people are suffering and losing hope, Joe Biden's claiming that Bidenomics is working to the extent that it's restoring the American dream.
Bidenomics is just another way of saying restoring the American dream.
He's talking about how he cut the deficit, he cut the debt. He's still promoting outlandish, totally false talking points, claiming that he cut the federal deficit by $1.7 trillion.
We actually cut the federal deficit by $1.7 trillion. Hear me? The first 2 years, we cut the debt by $1.7 trillion.
Absolute sheer nonsense. He's still promoting the same talking point that wages are growing faster than inflation.
At the same time, wages are growing faster than inflation.
Inflation ticked up last month. Remember when Joe Biden was doing a victory lap in July, claiming that inflation is pretty much over thanks to his Inflation Reduction Act? Every respectable economist was saying the same thing, that inflation is most likely going to be sticky, and they don't think we're out of the woods just yet. The next month it ticks up. Not to mention, wages are still not keeping up for the last 12 months. Yet this absolute doofus keeps yelling at us, trying to convince us how much of a great job he's doing in the restoration of America and the American dream.
There is no quit in America. Name me a single objective we've ever set out to accomplish that we've failed on. Name me one in all of our history. Not one. It's never been a good bet to bet against America. And it's still not a good bet today. America's best days aren't behind us, they're ahead of us. This isn't about the past, it's about the future we're going to build. And I've never been more optimistic about America's future. Just remember who in God's name we are. We're the United States of America. And there's nothing beyond our capacity when we do it together. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you.
The guy's a freaking goofball. Yeah, you know what? America's gonna be fine. America's gonna recover. But everyone knows that you're not gonna be the guy to do it. This guy's an absolute lunatic. And anyone who actually listened to that speech knows that that's the case. One second he's talking about how he's restoring the American dream when it's one of the worst economic times in the modern era. The next he's touting his great success using totally fabricated numbers. And then not long after, he's being an absolute freak when addressing young children in the room.
I want to say one thing to your children. I know some really great ice cream places around here. And Daddy owes you. Okay? So talk to me afterwards.
How are we expected to take this guy seriously? He is fundamentally unserious. The entire Democrat regime is so full of it, it's not even funny. Our economy is doing so well, says Democrat leader Chuck Schumer.
Our economy is doing so well, and it's in good part because of the work we in the Senate and the president did over the last summer.
And it's because of the Inflation Reduction Act.
When it comes to the Inflation Reduction Act, as great as it has been, the best is yet to come.
And of course, Joe Biden's been pushing the same talking points, that the Inflation Reduction Act is the reason inflation is going down. But he himself recently admitted that he wishes he hadn't called his spending bill the Inflation Reduction Act. Yeah, you think? I can't think of anything more paradoxical than a government expansion spending bill. I mean, these new post-pandemic bills have pretty much doubled government spending. The audacity of these Democrat politicians to name a money-printing, debt-stacking spending bill the Inflation Reduction Act. It's honestly laughable. When it comes to policy, it's not even close. You know, the Blue Anon Democrat shills, they're all gonna do the same thing. Their brains are being piloted by DCCC talking points. Wages are up, inflation is down, record job creation, Bidenomics is working. But the rest of us, we see it, right? The only hope is that independents are gonna see it. The only hope is that Joe Rogan sentiment that I played earlier is gonna catch on. Well, it seems like it might. New poll shows that Donald Trump has a strong lead over Biden with independent voters. In terms of the popular vote, while Biden has a 1-point lead over Trump in a hypothetical 2024 matchup, leading with 47% of voter support to Trump's 46%, Biden is losing by 8 points with independent voters. Biden only managed to grab 40% of independent support compared to Trump's 48% support. This right here is why the Democrats are trying to steer the conversation away from what's actually relevant to the American people and direct it to all the craziness. There's a reason MSNBC is giggling over the fact that Fani Willis, the totally corrupt attorney general in Fulton County, is trying to set a March 4th, 2024 trial date for President Trump days before the Georgia primary.
Fani Willis wants March 4th, which is just over 6 months, if I'm doing my math in my head correctly. The judge is going to have discretion over when this happens, though. What's your sense of, this is a brand new judge that's getting this case. He's been on the bench for 6 months, and this is a giant case. Can we read into him at all? Do we know anything about him?
Well, I think you're right. This is quite a case to cut your teeth on within your first year as a judge. But
because they know it's the only way that they can beat him. To steer the conversation away from the nonsense, Bidenomics is not working, and the Bidenomics propaganda is certainly not working. Trump clearly has a better policy track record. It's not even close. Biden's ratings on foreign policy, the economy, immigration, I mean, the list goes on. He's deeply underwater. And so they want to make the conversation about literally anything but. They want to win the election through a corrupt court system. But I think the tides are turning, and that's why we're seeing everything that we're seeing, especially the increase in sheer desperation. That's what I got for you guys on this one, though. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.